absolutely, whenever you hear this beat, you know what time it is. The Polity happening live on Udala Radio 104.7 FM. And of course, this is that one place where you get to have a deep dive into news, current affairs, and all of the things happening in and around Nigeria. And of course, have what we call the razor sharp analysis on all of them. And of course, we're live on Facebook and YouTube at Udala Radio 104.7. Just type that, you'd find the page, and you can join the conversation live. You see everything happening in the studio, and do not forget to like and follow our page on different social media handles to also keep tabs with everything we do here. My name is Chisom Chinedu. I have with me in the studio Franklin Ebuka. Good morning, Franklin.
Yes, good morning, and good morning to everyone listening to this very morning. Of course, it's a new day, and we are ready for us to take up the responsibility for the day. And it is quite a sad one, coming from Oko in Anambra State, because yesterday night we saw gory videos of people who were shot dead by suspected cultists. In the early hours of this very morning, Anambra State Police Command came out with a statement talking about what happened. In fact, they confirmed that it was court-related, but from what that very statement, they confirmed that 2 persons were killed, 4 persons were injured, and 2 persons were abducted. But we don't know. We don't have much this now. Maybe in the coming hours we'll be able to get more on that and then share with the people. And then here in Anambra State, coming from Waka, I don't know what is going to happen today at the office of ANSA. ANSA is Anambra State signage agency. You know that the agency sometime announced that it's going to charge 50 million naira for candidates before they get to begin to run their outdoor campaign. If you're going to do t-shirt branding, if you're going to paste your posters, mount your banners and billboard, of course you have to pay that amount of money before you begin the campaign. Many people kicked against it. Likewise, some parties kicked against it. Some of them came out openly to kick against it. And today I learned that a party, AAC, is planning to go on a peaceful protest at the office. So I don't know what is going to happen there today. So we are going to keep tabs on that and see what happens.
Most definitely, that is just it from the political side of happenings around Anambra State. But before we proceed with other things happening around us, we are not alone in the studio. I mean, myself and Franklin, our analyst, the Ogadagidi one of Osumoho, Dr. Tony Olisa Mbeki is here as well. Good morning, Doctor.
Good morning, Chisom Chinedu. Good morning, Nigerians. Good morning, dear number on Onitsha, not forgetting Southeast. Good morning, God Almighty, and we are here back. And let's do what we know how best to do. Is our altars always say we are with the truth and nothing but the truth. We're here. Thank you so much for joining us.
Most definitely. Yesterday, Franklin, I saw a video. There's been several interpretations. There's been so many other videos posted. You know how we like to join issues on the internet. Some persons have posted old videos to, do I call it, exaggerate what is happening or what happened in Oko yesterday. I saw a video of some persons, one in the hospital, some other persons, a girl, 2 men lying. I do not know if they've been pronounced dead. A report I saw said 2 people have been confirmed dead. Some persons have been kidnapped, including a lecturer. That's what some unconfirmed reports have said. But just curious to find out. I also did see a report by the police spokesperson of Anambra State Police Command. I'm trying to pull up what Tochukwu Ikenga said. He actually acknowledged that there was an attack there in Oko, Anambra State. According to him, he said 2 persons were killed. There was an alleged abduction of 2 other persons. 2 people were rescued, including a lady, and they are presently in the hospital receiving treatment. Now, according to him, he said police operatives are already acting on necessary information from some eyewitnesses for the possible arrest of the armed hoodlums. According to reports also, some persons claim that what happened there was a cult clash. But I am going to read out part of the statement from SP Tochukwu Ikenga, that's the police spokesperson of Anambra State. He said, an eyewitness account revealed that the armed criminals operating with a motorcycle and a black Lexus 350 SUV without a plate number started shooting indiscriminately at the Total Junction. 4 persons were allegedly wounded, including a lady that is currently receiving treatment at the hospital. 2 others were allegedly abducted at the Tipa Junction before they fled the scene. Franklin.
Well, just like I made reference to when I was making my opening remark that the police issued that very statement trying to explain what they've been able to gather, because that statement that came from the police was based on eyewitnesses' accounts and also based on what police division in that very area was able to report. Now, I'm not going to talk about the number of casualties because I have not been able to verify myself. So whether it's true or not, I can't speak to that in as much as I saw the video, because from the video I saw, I was thinking that the number of casualties were about 5 until that very statement came from the police spokesperson. But I just want us to pay attention to what has been happening in that very axis recently, Oko precisely. We have recurrent number of security breaches in that very area, and what that supposes is that the security agencies have to pay special attention to that very area to know what is actually happening there. Is it being driven by court activities? Because the one that happened yesterday, police say it was court related. Don't forget that it was about 2 weeks ago that somebody was killed in front of one particular wine bar.
A shop, yes,
exactly.
in a white car.
Exactly. Then when we probe deeper, we got that he was killed as a result of a fallout from a business deal that went bad. And some other persons also linked it to court-related issues. So police has to look into that very area, dig deeper to find out what is happening. If that means that court activities are growing in that very area, of course, they see how they can work together with the school to ensure that they get to bring it to the barest minimum.
Most definitely. We are going to read out what we have on the front pages of the paper. From there, we go into the discussion proper. Starting the conversation from the Nation newspaper, a lot of advertorials here again today, but above the nameplate of the paper, green bond oversubscribed by 91.4 billion naira, 47.36 billion naira allotted. This is on news page 7. Defense headquarters steps up action against killers in Benue. The writer here, Akume, leads peace panel. This is on page 2. Natasha's trial for defamation against Akpabio, Bello begins September 23. This is on page 3. Over 250,000 Nigerians are refugees in Libya, Cameroon, others. This is on news page 4. Now, also you'd find this one. Governors lift food distribution hurdles across states. That's on news page 4. Nigerians will enjoy good governance. Also on news page 4. Banner headline here. Tinubu, Kaduna rising again after overcoming insecurity. The riders here. President inaugurates projects. Kaduna will return. Tinubu says Abbas. Colonel Umar Bag CFR. Find these stories on page 2 of the Nation newspaper. And of course, you can also find some other stories on the Nation newspaper.
All right, so let's go over to the Vanguard newspaper, and as usual, we can see the advertorial concerning the commissioner of project of Mr. President in the FCT. So today is the day 3, and he's going to commission the newly constructed Life Camp Road to Ring Road in Abuja. And then above the nameplate, you have this headline that says Benue massacre. Troops got wrong intel on attackers. Okay. Benue massacre, troops got wrong intel on attackers' movements. CDS has a writer, survivors cry out over poor feeding, living conditions. You can see that on page 5 and also 7. If you read that very story, it talks about how the CDS, because yesterday there was this very media briefing he had in Abuja, and during that very briefing, he talked about how they were giving information about that attack that happened, but they were given wrong locations. So they mobilized to a location thinking that it was going to happen there, whereas the attack was planned for another place. And they even said that the community dwellers housed some of them and even gave the women over the night. So he was not thinking that perhaps there's a collaboration between locals and those people who came to perpetrate that very mayhem. Then Israel-Iran conflict. Trump to make war decision in 2 weeks. You can see that on page 8. Zenith Bank navigating CBN's prudential measures with confidence. That's on page 42 of Vanguard newspaper. Then other headlines we can see on Vanguard newspaper, they include TCN report rise in infrastructural attacks. And this one says, Benue massacre, local sheltered attackers gave them food and women. CDS Musa alleges. Tax, Wike says big men remain FCT's biggest problem. Alleged terrorism, I have no case to answer, Kano tells court. Of course, yes, the federal government closed its case on that very terrorism allegations leveled against Kano. Catholic bishops in Onitsha province declare Friday for fasting, call for prayer to end killings in Nigeria. So the Friday in question is actually today. But ask me, am I fasting or not? I'll tell you later.
All right, definitely. We are moving on from there too. Let's take a look at the Punch newspaper and see some of the stories here. Banner headline, food inflation, NSA, 36 states launch joint action. The Riders FG governors agree on free flow of goods across states to dismantle checkpoints, harmonize levies. Ribadu heads interministerial panel. Governors worry over World Bank funding delay. This is on page 2. Now, beside the nameplate of the paper, Dangote blames crude shortage as imports from U.S. surge. That's on page 19. Israel threatens Khamenei after Iranian missiles wound 240. This is on page 2 as well. And of course, skipping the editorials now, you'd find some more stories. Anambra directs residents to repaint houses. And of course, you'd find this one. PDP APC trade words as EFCC arrests 15 ex-Plateau lawmakers. USSD debt, telcos recover 170 billion naira from banks. 6,260 terrorists killed, 5,365 hostages rescued in 2 years. That's from the Defense Headquarters. Uromi killings, Kano, Edo silent as hunter compensation talks stall. Man jailed 76 years for child pornography fraud. Also, prosecution closes case as DSS links Kano to hashtag and SARS killings. WAFCON, Falcons to arrive Morocco, June 25.
Okay, so over to the Ghana newspaper, you see some picture stories here on the front page of the Ghana newspaper. But below the masthead, 1,500 killed in over 100 tank accidents, NEMA discloses. That's quite alarming. That tells you that we have lost a good number of lives to petrol tank accidents. And are we planning to have a policy on this, or we're just recycling numbers? Then experts review 50 million naira, or rather, experts review 50 million Nigerians with sickle cell warn against stigma. That's on page 3. Of course, yesterday was World Sickle Cell Day, and we talked about it here. So we are seeing the figures coming from the federal government now. 6,260 terrorists killed, 5,365 civilians rescued in 2 years, says DHQ. That's on page 2 of the Ghana newspaper. Then the big story, which is on pages 4 and 5, says violent attacks, peacetime killings, question value of Nigerian life. Another one says IBAS alleges sabotage at budget defense as Senate reiterates democratic rule. That's on page 25 of the Ghana newspaper. Again, Tinubu inaugurates Socialist Hospital named after him in Kaduna. That becomes this 8th project named after him in 2 years. Tension in Benue as herdsmen graze farmlands, youths intercept boss. That's on page 6 of the Ghana newspaper. And the final headline here says TCN accuses politicians, saboteurs of vandalizing electricity towers. Check page 30 of the Ghana newspaper.
And of course, we are going to start the conversation right at the moment, starting from here, Anambra State. Taking the story from the Punch newspaper, Anambra directs residents to repaint houses. course, if you just joined us, this is the Polity on Udala Radio 104.7 FM. My name is Chisom Chinedu. Franklin Ebuka is here, and of course, on the analysis desk, we have Honorable Tony Olisa Mbeki. And of course, we are starting with this conversation already, speaking about the repainting directive coming from the Anambra State government. The Anambra State government has directed residents and occupants of dilapidated, he emphasis on that, buildings that facing the environment in public view areas across the state to repaint their structures, adding that regulators will be embarking on field operations to enforce compliance beginning from July 1st. In a press statement released yesterday, the state's Commissioner for Environment, Dr. Felix Odimegu, said repainting of buildings with particular emphasis in Onitsha, Okambo, Newi and Ekulobia areas respectively will commence with immediate effect with the aim of achieving a clean, beautiful and eco-friendly environment. On the Maple side concerned, residents and corporate organizations in the areas mentioned are required to repaint their houses or buildings, especially those that have not been repainted in the last 10 years, or buildings whose current paint is defacing the environment. Tony, I'm pretty sure that you saw that particular statement, the one officially released yesterday, and you're privy to the reactions that have trailed this development. And of course, people are wondering the propriety of this particular directive at this point in time, and the big question, who is going to bear the cost?
I think let's begin with the total idea, the entire idea about the repainting. And I'm aware that the repainting is part of the Governor Charles Chukwuma Soludo's urban renewal vision for Anambra State, which he described as Anambra 2.0. And this initiative, I'm aware, focuses on beautifying urban centers, enforcing uniformity and orderliness in public spaces, and also enhancing tourism and economic appeal, and at the same time creating a livable and attractive environment in cities like Oka, Ekulobia, Onitsha, Newi. And you asked why the repainting. It's also believed that many buildings in Anambra State, especially in key towns like Onitsha and Oka, have suffered from years of neglect, aging paint, mismatched colors, and then haphazard renovations. This created visually chaotic landscape. You know, if you have traveled outside the country, if you've been in places like Dubai, Taiwan, and some parts of Europe, even China, you quite agree with me that the aesthetics, when we talk about aesthetics, we're talking about the beauty of public spaces. And it's more reason why you come down to these places, you say, oh, Anomobodo Ibo. That feeling, that aura, Anomobodo Ibo. Why do you project the fact Nino Bodoibo? Because of the landscape, because of the buildings, because of the roads. But can you be in that place or that kind of place in Anambra State? That's what the government is trying to say. That as part of his clean, green and smart Anambra, repainting is just one of the several elements which include drainage clearing or the silting. I've seen that, I've spotted that in some places. Billboard regulation, which the answer came out the other day to make announcement, tree planting, and even road re-asphalting, and power line clearing, and general environmental sanitation. But the truth remains, I think you put one question or the other. I remember if you go to some places in the Western countries, there are laws. And what I'm asking is a policy. What we have right now is a policy. Can we internalize it as a law that for 5-year period, buildings and their structural backings and everything will be looked into? So if you leave it at policy, it means that another government may come in after 8 years, as the case may be, and play low on it, and we go back to where we are before. What we'll be doing in this country is whatever thing that is good, do we plan for its sustainability? That's one thing we should be looking at. As we've got quite a lot of problems as far as public building is concerned, we are very grateful, and we're also privileged that we don't talk much about issues of housing being scarce in this space. There are some states, their citizens don't have homes. It becomes increasingly difficult for them to even have one, to own one, to even rent one. And there are places you can't even see where to rent. It becomes a problem. But in this part of the southeast, it is one thing an Igbo man is known for. He considered his home as a priority, where he stays, where he lives, and do his work. So now government is coming in to complement that effort, saying it's not just the homes. We want the homes to be as neat, as beautiful, as aesthetic as they could be. And that is why this issue of repainting, you talk about who will bear the brunt. We know what it takes, like what is the cost of a flat rentage in Anambra State. There are places for new buildings, 3-bedroom flats cost as much as from 1 million to 1.3 million newly constructed. I'm talking about average in Oka and Onitsha. I don't know about Ekulobia. Then you also talk about the old ones. The old ones, many of the landlords have geared up their rents from what it used to be. Before, now some were collecting 200 to 300 on average for 3-bedroom flats. But now, as we speak, on average is about 700,000 to 800,000. You can't collect these monies without some structural maintenance accompanying the very rent you are collecting. They are quick to increase their rents, but they are not quick to maintain the very building the rent is collected. It becomes a disparity. So in line with maintenance culture, which we lack here, I think that's what the government of Anambra State is trying to introduce, maintenance culture. If you go to Waliwo, you see so many buildings defects. And when we talk about Waliwo, we have 2 Waliwos. We have the one at MCC area. We also have the one at Ochanja area. These buildings were done in late 70s and possibly early 80s. So defaced, so worn out, but the owners, many of them may have died, but their children, who they handed these buildings over to, do increase the rent from time to time. And nobody's talking about maintenance. It's a problem, it's a malaise, which I don't think policy alone will correct. We need to have a law in place which is enforceable, and which the tenants can also challenge landlords on the rentage they collect without doing what they should do in accordance with the law. There's nobody who says that if you go outside the country, you love it, you look at the green surfaces, the issue of tree planting becomes important. And what, in fact, if I were to be the governor, every building must have trees planted around it, aesthetically. Not the ones you have, you won't be sweeping and then the leaves will litter everywhere. No, let's promote such thing. So when we talk about Dubai, it comes in conformity. The governor of Anambra State has just made it as a policy. If I were the governor, I will introduce executive bill so that it becomes part of our thing, part of our culture.
Tony, sorry. If you refer to the Anambra State Environmental Management Protection and the Administration Law 2024, it captures this thing you're talking about now. If you check that very law, just go through. I think it's around section 4. Around section 7 something, and go down. You see where it talks about how that. So I think they have already
legislated.
They have already thought about this, knowing that they will need to have a legislation that is going to back the action. Because ever since this government came on board, of course, I've been asking questions why the Ministry of Environment had not taken certain steps. And when I made some inquiries, they said they needed to have legal backing that is going to back most of the actions they are going to take. And I have seen that very law, so I know that they took their time to articulate it so that whatever they are doing must have legal backing. But this is my concern about this. Of course, if the mananya barando, nobody will see a good thing and say it's not good. If you come to a good scenery, if you come to a good environment that appeals to the eyes, of course, you want to live there. But my concern is, each time we are, making laws or bringing up a policy, let's always consider the poor man or the man who is on the street and who is not protected by the bourgeoisies. How do I mean? I'll just give you a clear example of what's happening in Anambra State now and any other part of Nigeria. It's not peculiar to Anambra State. In most places in Nigeria, we have seen that the real estate sector is not well regulated. It is at the whims and caprices of the landlords, the agents, and what have you not. Here in Onitsha, if you are going to secure an apartment of, let's say, 2-bedroom flat, maybe the rent is like 700,000 naira. But after you must have paid the rent of 700,000 naira, of course, you are going to pay the landlord for agreement fee, a guardian and duty. Yeah? Then you pay an agent fee for about 200,000 or 300,000. Like, it is at their own means and caprice to decide how much you pay them as agent fee. It's not regulated. Then at the same time, these people who are private individuals, they build all manner of they erect all manner of structures in name of service apartment or in name of residential apartments. There's no specification. But because we have scarcity of houses, of course, whatever you see available, you go for it. Now, my concern is that the moment these very people begin to paint their houses, because their houses are located in the in the public view area, there is every tendency that they would like the tenants to bear the consequence or to bear the brunt, because we have a system that suppresses the poor man, and the poor man is not protected. Let me give you an instance. I live in a place where, from the year I packed in, for 4 years I lived there. From the year I packed in, there was never any year that there was no increment. First, it was additional 50,000, second 100,000, third 200,000. Every year increment, it happened, and nobody blinks an eyelid. Now, if you are going to pack up from that place and go to another place, if not, if the okay, they kwa bargaining. So what am I saying in essence? The last increment my former landlord did was, he told me, okay, in the letter he gave us, he said there has been an increase in the cost of building materials and also land use charge. And I asked him, when did you already start building? You're talking about the increase in the cost of. So what I'm saying in a sense is, when these things are good, and when I got you how the when we are making this thing, let's have people at the center of these very policies and legislation, so that we have a way to protect them from the activities of the landlords who are going to take advantage of this very thing to increase house rent.
So is there going to be an executive order again this time around, insisting that this does not impact the cost of rent? Because like you pointed out, Tony, the cost of renting apartments in this part of the world became very outrageous in recent times. First, it was Asaba. It was likened to the influx of Yahoo boys back then in Asaba. But what we see in Anambra State at the moment, I do not know what to blame it on. I do not know if we should. As a matter of fact, like you pointed out, Franklin, we're not even going to go into the regulation of real estate activities in the state, because sometimes you find an apartment that is even relatively affordable. Relatively, because at the end of the day, you'd find that probably because of your own earning power, the average citizen cannot even afford such a small apartment. I mean, a room and parlor apartments in this state are given at 600,000 naira. As a matter of fact, I am talking about around 3-3. Talk about Transinkisi. Talk about behind Army Gate. I'm not joking. A room and parlor. You are hearing 600,000.
Is it a new building or old building?
A new building. Old buildings, you won't even see apartments for starters.
I think we are here to educate the public, because when I was actually talking about internalizing what Anambra State government has started or codifying it to be part of our laws, I'm very assertive on that. And I'm going to come back to the issue raised. And Franklin mentioned the issue of Anambra State Environmental Protection Agency law, originally established under Edict number 4 of 1991 and later reviewed, which created ANSEPA as a body which gives them responsibility for environmental sanitation and also protection, solid and liquid waste management, and the monitoring environmental pollution, and at the same time promoting beautification and greening of public spaces. But that law does not explicitly mention or talks about issues of repainting and timeline. So there are so many gaps. So the law talks about, it promotes beautification. It does not either brings penalty if you don't do it. It promotes, it tells people, please go on and beautify. That's not the kind of law we are looking at. Because when you have such law that gives you more about promotion, ensuring that all buildings and public premises meet acceptable environmental and aesthetic standard, any law that does not have penalty or punishment is no law, is advisorial. That law advises. We don't want law or laws that advise. We want laws that takes into account when people fail to do certain things and penalties involved. So now, I want to talk about Anambra State urban and regional planning law, which also regulates land use, building approval, and also modification and city zoning and development, enforcement of physical planning standards. We may need to tweak this, whether you call it ANSEPA law, which was established as Edict number 4 of 1991, which was later reviewed. We may need to go back to this law and make it as a matter of responsibility that for those properties owners, especially in urban areas, the need for them to conduct maintenance of the very structure every 5 years, which would also include painting and also the structural engineering part of the building. Very important. Where such is failed, there could be time given, that is moratorium or grace period, and where that moratorium is either exceeded or elapses, then government comes in. Government may do it, take certain possessions, and until the landowner pays the necessary dues. If government comes in and do it for you, because where you fail to do it, government, we may have a law that says government will come in and do it for you, and by the time, and takes charge of rent collection. Where situations you want to take over such rent collection, you have to pay every kobo, penny government must have done, the taxes involved and penalties involved. If we have such kind of a thing here and enforce it, you will see everywhere we look good. When you come back in 100-year period, you will see buildings. They will look, if you go to UK, you will see buildings erected 1885, 1865. They look good because they have laws which they enforce that talks more about maintaining these structures. It's important. Now, coming back to issue of high rent,
impacts on the cost of rent,
which many people in this, especially in Anambra State, they are groaning over it. Lagos State introduced monthly rent collection. Here, we have seen situations where monthly rent collection has been abrogated. It's no more either in vogue or in use. People pay yearly rent, and at times they pay rent 2 years. I've seen people who have paid 2 years, 3 years, yes. And we have civil servants, we have workers that collect monthly salary and pay yearly rent. What a mismatch. Do you want them to steal? These people collect their salaries monthly, and when they want to pay for house rent, they now pay yearly. This is exactly what Lagosians cried out, and the government of Lagos, I'm aware, Babajide Sanwo-Olu, in 2021, very much aware, he announced plans to transition from annual rent payment to monthly rent payment.
Plans to transition, has it been implemented?
Of course, they have come up with a law. He announced it in 2021.
You see, while that has been announced, while that has been announced, I also recall that I think it was Ned Nwoko who also brought it up on the floor of the House sometime last year. But the question has always been the convenience of that even. Now, the truth is, Tony, even if you ask tenants to pay monthly, the truth is that the cost of rent is still very high. And when a civil servant takes away that chunk, it still doesn't take away the fact that the average Nigerian is still living below poverty line. And so we are still talking about the cost here, not the mode of payment.
Both of them are involved, because if the cost is high, the mode of payment becomes increasingly difficult. But if the cost is low, the mode of payment may be plausible. So both of them are they are conjoined. But the point I'm trying to make is that law in Lagos State also looks into the cap. You can't build a house and then arbitrarily, and you call the house a public house, and arbitrarily charge whatever you like. Everything, that's where government is important. Government regulates our practices.
It's not being regulated.
But that's what we're saying here. That's why even Anambra State House of Assembly, the 8th Assembly, these are some of the things they should be looking into. Look at people-oriented laws, things that will impact on the people. Because some people believe once bought a land, they can buy the land at any cost. Some people have also said if you do this kind of law, it will discourage people from building houses. But I have also said that's not true. People who build these houses, they are not building it so that whatever rent they collect will give them the money they must have spent. Sometimes they build it as legacy projects that are going to hand over to their kids, to their children. So even if we regulate it, it's not going to discourage people from building houses. The point I'm trying to make now is, I know many of them are listening. Anambra State House of Assembly members are listening. The government of Anambra State is listening. We should have a tenancy law. If we have one, because I've searched, I didn't see any tenancy law in Anambra State.
I think there is, because I've spoken with lawyers about this.
I have spoken with lawyers. They told me there is, and I asked, can you give me one? They have been searching it. None of them can. Nobody has been able to say this law is tenancy law of Anambra State. I asked, they said there is, and I said give me one and let me peruse it. None has been able to provide it for me. So for now, I will still say there is none, because I've not cited one. I know it's a fallacy. For the fact you have not seen, you can conclude that there is none. But the point remains, even if we have, we need to go back to the law and amend it where that issue of rents, monthly collection, the cap. If you build house in 2025, it's different from someone who built house in 2020. It's different from someone who built in 2015. And what should be the cap? Government comes in there. You cannot charge anything in excess of 800,000.
For how many rooms?
It will be codified. Okay. A flat of a 3-bedroom flat, 2-bedroom flat. See, if you go to most places we copy our democracy from, government ensures that people are not exploited.
Does government invest in the housing schemes in those places that you speak of?
Of course they do, and at times they do invest, and at times
governments invest,
just like we have here. Government issues license for anything virtually
that there are things existing in those clients that have been put in place before those policies. Take, for instance, if you go to UK, do you know that you will see gardeners who own SUV in the UK? You see gardeners who own SUV.